I'm Andy Erwin, and this is the Storytellers. Coming up on this edition of the Storytellers, I am such a fan. This next person is an actress, writer, producer, but kind of one of the saints of our space. She has kind of led the charge as one of the first people to really bring faith mainstream. And she was on a hit TV show that everybody loves her from. And then she leveraged that into an opportunity to tell what we believe as Christians on a huge epic scale with her and her husband. And so deeply grateful. You know her from the hit TV show Touched by an Angel. And she leveraged that into the opportunity to tell the Bible as a series on the History Channel, and then went on to do the AD series and Son of God and Ben-Hur. And she and her husband, Mark Burnett, have done amazing things for our space. So grateful to have her on the show. Would you please welcome my good friend, Roma Downey. Roma Downey is on the Storytellers. I am been so excited about having you on the show. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you. Roma Downey Jr. I can't tell you how many times. I know I'm the original Downey.
You're the original. He's the junior.
Listen, he's up for an Oscar. It's great.
Oppenheimer. He's fantastic in it.
Yeah, he is. He's so good in it. So
yeah, we were just talking about, before we started, we were just talking about just seeing all the old friends that we all kind of started in proximity. You and Mark were definitely two of the trailblazers. Mel Gibson was a trailblazer. There were those, but we all started around the same time. Even if we're a few years behind, we followed your lead. But this has been a year where there's been seeing a lot of success from people that have, plowed very hard in the same direction. And people like our friend, Alejandro and Eduardo with their film Sound of Freedom. And then, we had a good year. And it's just with Jesus Revolution, you guys were an encouragement with that. It's been amazing to see some momentum when it comes to stories of faith. What do you think about that?
No, I'm delighted to see it, because for so long it felt like we were all pushing into the wind.
Yes, we did.
Take 2 steps forward, and you were 4 steps back. And and I think, as we just said, when somebody wins, everybody wins in this space, because we're all choosing different kinds of stories, but they're all ultimately stories that open the heart and, with an intention of encouraging people to get closer to God or to know God in some way, whether it's just through, through acts of kindness, like your latest movie, Ordinary Angel, has its roots in, or the story of the Jesus movement, through Jesus Revolution, or through the life of Jesus in our film Son of God, but they're all, they ultimately have they share the same heart, I think, the same intention. So it's great to see finally some momentum. I mean, when I first stepped onto the scene many years ago, went into CBS, and we met a CBS executive who whispered to me, I caught an episode of the show last week. It was really touching.
Wow.
And I said, why are we whispering?
That's
the
funny.
poster is on the wall.
That's
it's the number one show on the network. 25 million people are watching it every week. Why are we whispering? And so I would say, to answer your question, Andy, maybe we're no longer whispering.
Yeah.
Maybe the whisper has become a collective roar. And we're saying we're not some weird cult people that live on a state that you don't want to visit. We're the person that lives next door, down the street, that works in your bank, that works in the shop, that is picking up, it's like whatever. We are people who are everywhere. Believers are everywhere. And I think that finally, with quality material showing up consistently, that people are consistently showing up.
That's so well said. You know, I think it has I'm gonna quote that from this point on. It's Roma Downey, no junior needed, said that the whisper has become a roar. That's the quote of the year. I think it has been. When we stepped in to do Jesus Revolution, when my brother really felt called to do that film, we were nervous because we thought, how is that going to be received? But we just kind of leaned into the rebellion of like, this is a moment in time where Christianity was overt, but it was also counterculture. It was like an act of kindness had become an act of rebellion. And there's kind of this chip on our shoulder that I think all of us have carried for a while because we've had to apologize or been, assumed that, they felt like we should apologize for being Christians. And now we're saying, no, we're fully realized human beings. And these are stories that move our heart that are not weird. And I think for the first time, in the longest time, for the past 15 years, superhero movies have been the staple of the studios, and their superhero films aren't working right now. And I think they're nervous and they're looking for new audiences. And there's an opportunity for stories of faith, and we've all been emboldened in the fire together. So that's exciting. With Touched by an Angel, weren't you told early on that it wasn't going to be on the air, but for like a couple of weeks?
Yes. Well, we did some photo shoot for TV Guide,
Yeah.
which was still a big magazine at that time, and they were photographing all the new stars of all the new shows. And Della and I, we were kept waiting, and we got our picture. And you could, again, to your point, that sort of slightly apologetic that we should be. Well, she was apologetic to no one ever.
Yeah.
She was one of a kind. And she really tried to mentor me and all of that. She was just so wonderful. She was like a mom to me. But the article said this is the iffiest new show of the season, and by the time you read this, it'll probably be gone.
Wow.
And I honestly, I wish I could find that somewhere, because I bet
Frame
you all
it.
the other shows were all gone. I bet you they were all gone, and we were there season after season after season. And our very first season, we were up against Roseanne, which was a big comedy at that time.
Yeah.
We were on a Wednesday night, and then they moved us to a Saturday night, and then they moved us to a Sunday night, and then they put us on early hiatus, which is usually the kiss of death.
Yeah.
And then we just started this kind of grassroots. This is where the people spoke. And we went out through the churches and we spoke and just asked people, did you, and people just, rose up. And CBS, I think, were pressured to put the show back on. And we ran for almost 10 years. So
that's amazing.
It really was such a privilege to be the messenger, and as a believer to be able to deliver a message every week. That somewhere there was a speech that I would give. I would pretend to be a waitress, or I pretended to be a doctor or a school teacher, or whatever it was I was supposed to be, an angel in disguise, waiting for the moment that the person I was working with would maybe just finally say, I can't do this by myself.
Wow.
God help me. It's in that broken place. Like one of my favorite Leonard Cohen quotes is, to ring out the bells that still can ring, forget your perfect offering. There's a crack in everything, and that's how the light gets in.
Wow.
And I love that so much. And I feel that on Touched by an Angel, it was when the moment when the person cracked, when the pain was too much, or the addiction was too much, or the loss was too heavy, or the disappointment was too great. In that moment of cracking, it allowed God to step in, and in this case, God came in the shape of an angel with the message that was, you are important to God. He has a purpose for your life, and he loves you. And so every week I got to deliver this message, and Della and I would, on our crew, we had quite a few believers on the crew, but we would hold hands. We'd say, anybody want to pray this in? And we would hold hands before that scene each week, and we would just pray it in. And my prayer was always the same. It was less of me and more of you,
Wow.
less of me, more of you. Just so I, in another conversation that you and I have had in the past, we've talked about having to get out of the way,
Yep.
because when
Yep.
you're playing something like an angel, and then I played in the Bible series, I ended up playing Mary, the mother of Jesus.
Yep.
And these are big, these are kind of big
It's a lot of
shoes.
pressure. That's a lot of pressure.
It's like I played an angel, I played the mother of Christ. And
that's the Mount Rushmore right there. That's incredible.
And sometimes in conversations, if somebody says a curse word or something, like I'm not much of a cursor myself, to be honest, but I'm not Mary, the mother of Jesus. I'm not an angel. I just played one on TV. It'll always be to me that people look like, oh, sorry. Like
is that hard? Because I'm really good friends with Jonathan Rumi from The Chosen as well, and plays Jesus.
There must be so much projection that people project onto you, and so that's what I mean about learning. I got so many people projecting angel things onto me, and people almost like, not confession, but like people would feel they immediately could. They've sensed, because the quality I had to play more than anything was compassion. I had to have compassion. But here's the thing, Andy, my mother died when I was a little girl. I was only 10 and my mum died.
And then your father passed away when you were like 20?
My father passed away. And so I really feel that one of the, that God gives and God takes away and God restores, is that what he really awoke in me through early loss was compassion.
Wow.
I really have compassion for people that I have lost. I know what it is to suffer loss. I know what that feels like and how awful that is. And so if I'm around anybody that's grieving or has lost somebody, I can honestly put my hand on my own heart and say, I know what you're going through. And there's no way, sometimes there's no way through it except going through it, and sometimes you want just somebody to quietly sit there and hold your hand. There's nothing even to be said when somebody's experiencing great loss. And what's interesting to me is how the role of Monica, the angel, untouched by an angel, found me, because in many of the scenes, she's just listening, and there's a quality of listening, from your life on a set, that an actor can't pretend to listen, or you see them acting. You've got to really, can you be present? Can you show up? Can you really listening? So I always thought that the very things that I was going to need to play the angel, or arguably even the mother of Jesus, was a heart of love and a heart of compassion. And I feel that my early life had prepared me for that. And I'm sure that, that God had a lot to do with that, I would bet you. But anyway, I'm sure that Jonathan Rumi must get everybody's projection of what they feel about Jesus and their love for Jesus. Or it's a lot for him to carry. We pray for him.
It's a heavy load.
It's heavy. It's a heavy load. I mean, it must be a wonderful thing too, because people, how many billions of people love the Lord. So he's also receiving a lot of loving and light, and people are holding him up in prayer. But it's a big job. It's a big job for sure.
With you, for having lost your mom early, Della seemed like such a mother figure. I never got a chance to meet her before she passed away, but she just seemed like a special human being. What did Della mean to you in your career and your life? What did you learn from her?
Well, I learned so much from her. I mean, from the very simple, she would say to me, they'd ask, it's like they're running late on the set, and, could you go later? Could you push your call time? Would you sway the time that they're allowed to keep you? And she'd look at me and she'd say, just say no. Just say no.
Wow.
And I'd be like, well,
like, that's okay.
It's okay to say no, really, was what she was saying. It's okay to say no, because I would be, by nature, maybe a little bit of a people pleaser.
Yeah.
And she said, it's okay if you're doing a movie. It's okay if you're doing a movie. You could say yes because you've got 6 weeks, 3 weeks, 2 months, whatever it is. But you're here for years. You're here. You're first woman in the morning. You're the last person out at night, and you're here every day. And I
Wow.
was. It was like it was a lot to carry the show, and she was just say no. It's okay to say no.
Wow.
And so, and so in my politeness, I would say, well, no, sorry, but no. She would like, you don't even need to say you're sorry. You just need to say no. But what she really gave me was, when she held me in her arms, she was one of the best huggers that
Wow.
I have ever met. She'd take me in her arms, and it was just the safest place in the world to be. She was protective and loving. And, she didn't have a birth daughter. She had an adopted daughter, Dumpsy, who died unexpectedly when we were shooting Touched by an Angel
Wow.
together. And not long after Dumpsy's funeral, we walked together on the beach. And Della said to me, baby girl, she said, God is so amazing because I always knew that He brought me into your life because you needed a mama.
Wow.
She said, I just didn't realize
Wow.
that He brought you into my life because I was going to need a baby girl.
Oh my
She
gosh.
said, will you be my daughter? I said, yes. And she said, then I am your mama.
Wow.
And she was. And so I know that the show was about bigger things than just me and Dell,
Yeah.
But I really do believe that friendship and the love that we shared, that it couldn't escape the camera,
It
And
came
so
through.
that relationship came through. And I think it also just helped to elevate the love, on the screen. And I still meet people. The show still runs and reruns somewhere.
Yeah.
And I meet people, usually either they'll say, my mother loved your show, or they'll remember watching it with their granny and their sister. It was sort of it was a shared experience on the couch, and they remember that. But they always just remember, like, the love. They always say, oh, I felt the love between you and Delarice. And I go, well, that was a real love. And she was funny and feisty, and I'm quieter and maybe gentler. And so we were kind of very contrasty. She was big and bold and black, and I was small and pale and Irish, And yet when we got together, it was just something, it was bigger than two people. It was like, and then you add, the Holy Spirit into that.
Yeah.
She was a woman of faith, she was a preacher. And and I had come from a faith background, so we, I just think it was all kind of meant to be. And and there people will still tell me that when that scene where we announced that we were angels, that something, and I just think it was the Holy Spirit, that moved through us and out through the lens and into people's hearts. And I really think that happens and did happen. It was a grace-filled experience. And so when I left that show, Andy, and I was raising a family, and, I had other things that I was doing, but I missed the, it wasn't that I missed acting. I missed the part of doing something that had a different kind of purpose,
Yeah. Oh,
And so it was in the spirit of that I started our company, Lightworkers, with
yeah.
the intention to bring content that was uplifting and inspirational, that maybe would have themes that were directly related to our faith, or
Yeah.
maybe would just be, kingdom principles.
Yeah.
But either way, that would open the heart. I always felt that my calling was to open hearts. And that then God's promise was, you open hearts, and then I step through. Not that He needs me to do anything
Yeah.
for Him, but through storytelling, it's like it's like where the light gets in. If you can help through storytelling to create that crack in the hardness that people have over their hearts, or the armor, or people have been hurt and wounded, or people have been let down, and we start to shut down layer by layer. And sometimes the right story at the right moment is the thing that peels the onion and that will uncover the heart. And then when the heart can crack open just a little bit, then I believe the grace of God just moves in and does the rest. And our job as filmmakers, as storytellers, the call in my life is to tell stories that open the heart. Now, the heart can be opened in ways that aren't just things that would make you cry. Obviously, the heart can be opened with laughter. The heart can be opened with drama, or, with whatever the genre happens to be. But I still think my approach to storytelling has always been on a heart level, as opposed to like a story that is really complicated that you have to wrap your mind around. I'm much more heart driven in my real life, and it's what I'm attracted to in the stories that I tell.
I mean, it shows. And everything that you said is, I mean, it's the reason why we named our company Kingdom Story Company. Story is what's the power to that. That's why we call this podcast The Storytellers. And that's why we love other storytellers like yourself. Jesus was a storyteller, that he was a master storyteller. And the way he connected with people was he would tell parables that didn't spell out all the answers. They engaged the audience with vicarious emotional journeys. And then, it didn't answer all the questions. And then people would come to him and say, what did that mean? And then he would explain the story. And even when people didn't know it was him, like on the road to Emmaus after he had risen from the dead, like, he's talking and he's shrouded from these disciples walking with him. They don't even know it's Jesus. And then all of a sudden, the last minute, he reveals himself and he leaves. And they said, didn't our hearts burn within us when we walked with him? And so it was his stories that just engaged the heart. And I think that's where the power to what we get to do is. And if you can jam a wedge between somebody's heart and their head and have them really just engage emotionally for 2 hours, then that seed takes root, and then it begins to challenge their thinking. It stays with them, and there's a power to it. With you, I remember being at the Variety Faith Film Summit that Variety had this first ever Faith Film Summit. I'd only done one film. It hadn't even come out yet. John and I were there, and the keynote at the end.
That's going back a few years. Huh?
Yeah, that was 16 years ago or so. And at the keynote at the end was your husband. And I didn't, I knew Mark from his prowess in reality television and competition shows, and he was a mogul for sure, and I knew his story, but I didn't know what you guys had planned. And he got up that day, and I remember he announced the Bible series.
That's right. And did he have some footage or anything?
Yeah, he showed a 10-minute sizzle.
Yeah.
And everybody in the room, their jaw was on the ground.
Yes.
And for multiple reasons. But we were like, oh, this is a game changer for two reasons. Number one is to have the amount of resources that you guys were pouring into the biblical narrative was huge. But then secondly, not since Mel Gibson with The Passion of the Christ had we seen people that had your stature and your names leveraging their names and pushing it all into the middle of the table. And we're going to leverage what we have on this earth for something eternal. And I know that had to have a tremendous amount of risk with what you guys did.
It was a little scary, probably scarier for Mark too, because I had already thrown my hat in that.
It was a new arena for him.
It was a new arena for him. And I remember when he did that, because I was still over in Morocco, where we made the series, discovering dust in places that I didn't even know I had. I was the dustiest 6 months of my life.
Yeah.
But what a incredible experience, and what a great experience for us to get to do that together, as a husband and wife. And we at times we were, we, I don't even know at times if we knew what we were doing. It's just, there were moments where we were just sort of flying by the seat of our pants. There were other moments that felt, scary in a way that, that you're so vulnerable. Maybe
Yeah.
it was like feeling so vulnerable, and and people can be cruel. The press in particular. Um, but we just, we did a lot of. I remember in that period of time when we were launching it, Andy, where we did a lot of TV shows together, and we had, yourself, if you're asked something sometimes, and it's you don't have an answer for it, or you don't want to go down that particular road, and
Yeah.
it's that old kind of political trick of you're
Yeah.
asked
The
something,
sidestep.
but whatever, the sidestep. And
Yeah.
the
Ask the
sidestep,
question you want to answer and answer that question. Yeah.
so we would have like some sort of like Morse code with our hands, like squeeze, or like a double squeeze. I can't remember, meant, you take it or I take it, or
Yeah.
and really all that we would do was like Woodlawn style. We would just, it's like, hit the ball and run as far away as you can from the question. Just keep running, because it felt at times that, particularly in the secular press, that everybody was looking for a way to trip us up,
Yeah.
and it wasn't always that supportive. But we, with the grace of God wrapped around us, somehow we, again, it was another show that, particularly our contemporaries and colleagues who didn't share our faith, said, you're gonna, you're risking a lot here. You're risking a lot of money. You're risking reputation. And do you really think anybody's going to show up to watch the
Wow.
Bible on television?
Huh.
And now this is before The Chosen, so
Yeah.
this is back when it really was,
It was radical.
unlikely.
It was very radical.
Right. Yeah, it was radical. And it was on the History Channel. So I don't know what their normal demographic would have been, but, probably big battles and stuff,
Yeah.
which certainly the Old Testament had a few of those to show. But we sort of did what we could. We worked hard. We really did a very big press tour. We went out. It was almost like door to door to get people to tune in, but they did. They tuned in their droves. And, our finale was up against the finale of Walking Dead and the Game of Thrones, both which were very popular shows.
Yeah.
And the Bible's ratings beat both of them combined.
Wow.
And they said by the time all was said and done that over 100 million people had tuned in to see the Bible.
That's amazing.
And then for many people, at home, but also around the world, for many people, it was their first encounter with the Bible. And, there's something obviously about reading it or hearing it preached on that's different. And anybody like myself that is a visual learner, to see the story brought to screen, I think then when you go back to scripture, you kind of go back to it with different colors and textures and,
Yeah.
and faces, and it can help bring it alive in a different kind of
Yeah.
way.
It's emotional archaeology. It's amazing.
And we got a lot of feedback just that people, came to the Lord through it, and that people, and then we had our, in our, we had our Jesus, and then somebody had hashtagged him Hot Jesus.
I saw that.
And at first I was like, oh, that sort of seemed like irreverent and disrespectful. And then it just, when it goes
clicked.
viral, and then you're
Yeah.
like, well, hey, if that's what's going to take to get people to come in, because
That's awesome.
it's like it was a really, really great time for us. And then we followed that up with AD, and we followed it up with just taking the Jesus narrative and making
that moment when you guys decided to do the Bible that led to all the other things that you mentioned. You, like you said, you had already made your declaration. You had spent 10 years in that faith world. And obviously you and, you and Mark have had a lovely marriage. You've been married for how many years now? 20 years, almost 20 years.
Yeah, we're together 20 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, uh, you know, so obviously he had been around that, but Mark had built this other empire, with all the other things that he was doing. I mean, Mark is, he's a force of nature when it
Oh
comes
my
to.
God. When it comes to anything, he's dynamic,
He is. So what pushed him over the edge, like as far as like saying, okay, I'm in it with you and I'm going to put my name publicly into the same arena. Like that had to, let me be a little fly on the wall in those conversations that you had together, as much as you want to share, but like what were those conversations like?
Well, I do remember one conversation. Usually in our house, everything happens over tea.
Yeah.
He's English. I don't hold that against him. I'm Irish. And, we make good, solid cup of tea.
Yeah.
And, we're sitting down talking about it. And I just said we should, we wanted to do something together. We had created Lightworkers. I wanted, Mark hadn't even really done drama. I mean, he's the king of reality, isn't he? They coined that phrase, Shark Tank, The Voice, Survivor, The Apprentice. Are you smarter than a fifth grader?
Yeah.
On and on. Hits rolling out. And he said, well, what story of the Bible were you thinking of telling?
The whole thing.
And I said, no, the whole Bible. And, and it was like that moment where it sat there, for a minute, we gulped our tea. And it's like, And so, that it's had to begin, it just began. Then we went down to Pepperdine, which is our local university.
Beautiful campus.
And we went down and we met with their theological staff. We just wanted to. It was really we just started pitching. Not pitching, but just sort of what would this look like? And really, the feedback in general, people were very excited, I think, and we got a lot of encouragement. But we also got a lot of warnings. If you get it wrong, you can't, and I think maybe they didn't think maybe we weren't the best equipped. We're not Bible experts, Andy. I'm still not a Bible expert.
Neither me.
I love the Bible, and I read the Bible and I love the book of Psalms in particular and the Gospels, of course, but I'm not, we weren't pretending to be. We thought, well, we're going to have to get experts, So then we were getting scripts written, and then we had this selection of maybe 40 people, pastors, bishops, theologians, scholars, a kind of variety of denominations. And that was the most complicated part in the whole thing, because nobody of the 40 people could agree with each other. Never mind give us the thumbs up that we got it right. There was no agreement. It was like, and so, it's all spread out over our kitchen floor and on our kitchen table and different drafts and cutting. What did he say? Well, what about that scene? Well, what did, Bishop so-and-so say about that? And, oh no, well, what, it was.
Wow.
And then we just had prayer. I have been a part of a prayer circle for a while. And then I just asked my prayer circle if they could just, like ripples, just kind of get us into other prayer circles to just pray for wisdom, pray that we would know the right thing to do, pray for the right person to show up. I mean, we didn't even have our Jesus cast, and we were 4 weeks from principal photography.
Wow.
4 weeks.
Got a critical role there, Roma.
Oh my goodness. And I know, and I sent out an email to my group, and the heading title was "Looking for Jesus."
Oh my God!
And I was like, no, but really, we're really looking for God to pray him in. And then I got a videotape. Now, of course, after COVID, a lot of casting happens by videotape. But back then, you were still hoping to see somebody in the room. And I was in Los Angeles, but our main casting office, because we were shooting in Morocco, we were casting it out of London. So when I got on the phone to this agent, the agent thought I was in London. and said to me, "I'm sorry, my actor is traveling and can't come in." And I said, "Well, where is he traveling?" And she said, "Oh, he's in Los Angeles."
Wow.
And I was like, oh, "Okay, now we're
This
talking
is the
my
guy.
language." And I had like this videotape, and I said, "Well, could he come over and meet with me?" And it's a whole other story, Andy, but I have this butterfly significance in my life. And sometimes the butterfly shows up as a reinforcement that I'm on the right track.
Yeah.
And so Diogo Morgado, this beautiful, hot Jesus, Portuguese actor who showed up, and Mark was running down to do something in the other part of the house. And he said, "What are you doing?" And I was standing looking through. We have a glass panel in our front door. And I said, "I'm waiting for Jesus."
Wow.
He's come. And he said, "Who?" And I said, "Oh, this actor. I really have a feeling he's going to be the actor." And so Mark stood. We were like a couple of kids looking at the glass to try and get a look at him. And he started walking down the pathway towards our front door.
I've got
And
the
then,
picture in my head because I know your
been
property.
there,
That's
Andy,
magic.
Andy, then this butterfly swooped down.
Huh.
I was glad Mark was with me because it sounded like something I would have, could have made up.
Yeah.
We thought at first it was a little bird. It was so big.
Yeah.
It almost knocked Diogo off his feet. He kind of staggered slightly and looked up at it, and then he walked in, and I just knew before
He's
he
the guy.
opened his mouth. I thought,
He's
there
the
it
guy.
is. I prayed for a sign. I asked prayer groups to pray that I would know him when he got there, and he walked through my front door, and I was like, "Oh, there he is. Thank you."
I
And
love
not a
that
minute
story.
too soon. Not a minute too soon.
I love
Did
that
he
story.
arrive?
That's
I
amazing.
know. I know.
That
It's a true story.
I,
It's extraordinary, isn't it?
I love that. It gave me, because I can visualize it. It's so cinematic because I know your driveway. I know your property. I can see him walking. That's amazing. I love how committed to prayer you guys are. And on that same property, I've been to several prayer meetings that you guys would have on the back, outdoor area, overlooking the ocean. And we had one leading up to Jesus Revolution where I was out there. I didn't even know you guys were having it, but I ran into somebody that said, "I'm going to a prayer meeting tonight at Mark and Roma's." And I texted Mark and I'm like, "Is this happening tonight?" He's like, "Come over." So I called Jonathan Rumi was with me because we were out there promoting the movie. And I said, "Jonathan, come with me." So we went to the prayer meeting and we weren't planned to be there. It wasn't something orchestrated or anything, but there were so many powerful voices from our industry that we've all been in this battle together, that the people that have gone from a whisper to a full roar. It's those, that band of misfits that have kind of united over the years, a lot of recognizable faces. And we were back there and you had somebody playing acoustic guitar and playing some praise and worship music. And then we had a time of prayer. And you and Mark just impromptu kind of turned the whole group towards us and said, "We want to pray for an anointing for Jesus Revolution," and laid hands on me and Jonathan and brought me to tears, said some things that were just
So special.
profoundly
It was so
impactful to
special.
me.
Yeah.
And it was
Good.
just, I think that night I just had such an appreciation for the community that we've all been a part of and for the leaders that you and Mark have been in that community. You've inspired our career along the way. Why has it been important that as you blaze the trail, I think a lot of times in the industry, you can become very territorial and say, "No, it's just my brand. It's my, films. But for those of us that are believers that have an eternal perspective, it's very it's easy to say, it's very difficult to model. Why was it important for you guys to give it away to other people coming behind you?
Well, I mean, to your point exactly, I love that phrase, eternal perspective. It really is we're not in competition with each other to tell these stories. Our purpose is to bring people closer to God. And that's, we all have a shared heart on that. And anyway, I always think it's like the more, more is more.
Yeah.
It's not, there's plenty to go around. And, where it's not we're not in competition. It's not a feeding frenzy for business. I think it's, that kindness is just, I remember so well. And then King and Country did a lovely redo of it. That song we grew up with. They'll know we are Christians by our love.
Yeah, it's the one we put in Woodlawn at the end, and you guys used originally on AD.
That's right. That's right. It's that. I just love. I love their version of it, and it's just a great reminder, that, and love is a verb. Anybody can say I love you, but it's like it's a doing word. It's doing something, and anyway, it has been very joyful for Mark and I to. We have a beautiful home, to have been able to open up our home. It's the same opening up of and inviting people in, and people bring so much love and light, and grace comes in, and goodness, and it's just nice. Community is everything, isn't it? It's like
it is.
Life is hard enough by doing it by yourself.
Yeah.
We have watched yourself and John and going from success to success, and we're very happy. We feel sort of strangely proud of you because we've known you for so long, and just seeing other, and hoping that somewhere out there, maybe listening today, is someone who will be inspired by our mutual conversation to pick up a pen and write that story, or write that script, or write that book, or it's like you don't know till you try. It's like, and I mean, when I grew up in the War of Northern Ireland, I used to sit in my little back bedroom listening to. I had one cassette that belonged to my big brother, and it was the best of Simon and Garfunkel.
Wow!
It's just how long ago that was.
I love it.
And I would listen, and I think that Paul Simon is one of the great American poets. And his lyrics were my first experience of America. And, obviously I was growing up in wild times in the north of Ireland.
Yeah.
And while I love my hometown, love my family, I, was hoping to get out of that situation because it wasn't always pleasant, and sometimes it was very scary. But I would listen to these lyrics and think, I'm going to go to America, with certainty, having no idea that I would ever really come to America. And I did first went to New York. I joined a theater company, and I had an opportunity to come to America. And my first job in America was checking coats.
Wow.
In a fancy restaurant in New York City on the Upper West Side that I never could have afforded to eat at this restaurant. And I would sort of dreamily watch these, wealthy Upper West Siders come in and hang their, beautiful cashmere coats. And then I'd, sort of dreamily look out at them all eating. Then they'd all leave. And if I was lucky, I got $1 a coat, maybe, quarter a coat, $1 a coat. And, it was a living. And I was grateful for the job. And then one night, a morning talk show host called Regis Philbin checked his coat, and he gave me $20. Wow. And of course, I never forgot that, because that was a great deal of money for me to get for a coat. And 5 years later, I tell the story only because 5 years later, I'm now the star of a hit show called Touched by an Angel. That's how quickly my life turned upside down. And I'm living in Salt Lake City, which is where we filmed. I'd moved to Los Angeles, but then I moved to Utah to shoot the series. And I'm invited to New York City to do a press tour. And I was doing in the evening, I did the David Letterman show. But in the morning, I was invited to do the Regis Philbin show.
Wow.
And it's like, it was such a great closed circular story.
Did you tell him the story?
Of course I told him the story. And he was so funny. He was like, oh, he said, this could be very bad. this could be very bad. Didn't stiff you? Did I stiff you? I wouldn't come on your own show and tell a bad story about you.
That's
I said,
awesome.
you gave me $20. And then, of course, he drew the conclusion, which is really, I think, the beautiful part of the story is that what a great country that we live in, that such a thing could happen.
Wow.
That you could be checking coats 1 minute and starring on a TV show the next. It's like, it is such a land of opportunity. And Americans are filled with encouragers and supporters. I think the people love that. Like, they're like, good on you that you worked hard and you had drive and you moved it forward. And so I'm very grateful to America. I mean, obviously, I'm Irish and I always will be, but I'm also a naturalized American. And my children are American born, and my husband is naturalized, and we just, love this country.
I love it.
And love what it has allowed us to do here.
I love that storyteller heart still beats in you. As we kind of wrap things up, when we were at your house, Mark was, you guys had just sold, been a part of selling MGM to Amazon, and he was finally getting a well-desermed break.
Well, he is. He's on a slope somewhere, snowboarding.
He's snowboarding. It seems like he's been there all year.
He loves the.
He does, and I love that. But when we were at your house, he was like, "Hey, we're handing the baton off to you, and I'm going to take we're taking a break, and I think I'm done for a while." And then you spoke up. It's like, "Hey, wait a minute, buddy. Speak for yourself. I've still got stories to tell."
I know. Well, last Easter, as you know, I had the Dennis Quaid Head on a Wing Prayer that did very well over there at Prime. And then I've also been authoring some books, Andy. Since we would have first met, I've authored 4 books.
It's amazing.
Box of Butterflies became a New York Times bestseller. And
we still got my signed copy from you in the back.
Oh, good. And I just came out with a children's book called A Message in the Moon.
Mm-hmm.
And then, my greatest joy, my greatest recent joy, as you know, we spoke about before we started the podcast, is the recent announcement that the Baxter's series.
You've been fighting for that one for a while.
I have been fighting
the good project. Fight.
Honestly, it's I need to sort of sit down maybe before I start doing a serious press for it to recount the obstacles, because I think it really it does become a story of a test of patience, a test of trust, a test of tenacity. Yep. I mean, everything that could have come at this project to stop it came at it. There were doors closed and there was silence, and there, I mean, it was been very frustrating and quite a few years to get here. But it's, I have to just trust that this was the time for it, that for such a time as this, that God saved it to come out now. So it is coming out this spring on Prime, and it's based on a best-selling book series by the amazing, talented writer Karen Kingsbury, New York Times bestseller. And it's one of, when I optioned the book, I think she had 25 in the series. And each of her books, the Baxter family, sort of tackles it through one of the family members. And so the first book is called Redemption. And it deals with Carrie Baxter, the oldest daughter. I not only produced it, but I stepped in to play the role of Mrs. Elizabeth Baxter. So I'm going to be back on TV.
Makes me very happy. And there is another person that shares your likeness that will be part of the cast as well. Your daughter.
My daughter, Riley. I always joke, she has the life of Riley, and I have the life of Riley's mom. And she plays Erin Baxter. She's one of 5 grown children that Elizabeth and John Baxter have. John Baxter is played by Ted McGinley.
Love him.
In the series. And we have a lovely, young, up-and-coming cast. They're gorgeous. And the story plays out a little bit. It's a little bit like a soap opera, in that way that you've got it. You're going to want to binge it. You're like, I can't believe he did that. What happens next week? But we've coined the phrase a hope opera. And I think that's kind of sums it up, because
I love that.
The stories are catchy, and it ultimately is how family comes together, how community comes together. And we haven't really seen this, Andy. We haven't seen, sometimes when Christians show up on, TV shows, maybe there's a singular character, or sometimes they're a crazy character, But we haven't really seen a family where they're just easy with their faith, and their faith is front and center. And so in this family, like John and Elizabeth, when something goes wrong with one of their kids, as inevitably it does, every family has drama, right?
Yeah.
Instead of just pouring into the drama and fuel to the fire, this couple hold hands and they pray.
Powerful.
And they pray for their kids. And it's very powerful. And it's powerful to see it on TV. And I think that believers everywhere, and non-believers, but particularly believers, will like to see themselves on the screen. It's like finally we can see how a family that looks a little bit like ours, and the characters are also diverse. The kids are also different. That I bet you everybody will look at it and say, "Oh, I relate to. I'm more of a Carrie. I'm more of an Ashley Baxter. I'm more of an Erwin Baxter." So next time we talk, Andy, you'll have to let me know who you think what character resonates with you most.
I think the thing I'm the most excited about is to see you back on a TV show. Like, I just because movies, which you've done your fair share of, it's about a moment and it's about a story. But TV is about a relationship, and you've had a relationship with audiences. And so to reconnect with that relationship, I think is powerful.
You're right. There's something about that relationship that doesn't have the intimacy. It's like I can be enamored and in awe of a performance up on the screen. But when you show up in my living room every week, or you show up in
it's a relationship.
My home, we're in a relationship. And when you play the character or characters, as I have been fortunate enough to do, that are characters that people end up trusting. I can trust this woman. I really love this Baxter series, and I'm very hopeful for this hope opera when it goes out this spring, this Easter time on Prime, that it will become a family favorite.
I love it. And I think the audience needs to, I can't wait to watch it. My family's going to watch it. And I can't wait to report back how much I love it, because I know I will.
Good. Well, it is a show, Andy, that you can watch with your family, and that's always very important to me. There's nothing. It deals with some pertinent themes. There is an adulterous relationship in it, and there are things that happen, and it's like real life stuff that happens in it. But it's done in a way, I think, that if you sat down with your family, that you wouldn't be upset.
It's going to be beautiful. I can't wait to watch it. Last question we always end with our guests is, I love to just for fun understand what your favorite film is. You can take faith films, take my films, take all that off the table. Just your favorite film that you enjoy for you and why. Favorite
Gladiator. Movie. Gladiator is my favorite movie. Yes.
I watched that with my 15-year-old for the first time the other day. First time he had seen it. And it was a moment. Like, I love that movie.
I love it too. it's a bit more violent than my taste usually runs.
Yeah.
But it's like that reluctant hero, and there he is, and he, he's loyal, and he's loving, and he's honorable. It's like he's got values that I can relate to, and that Hans Zimmer score just
it's
does
so good. But I love your taste, by the way, and but that movie, they struggled with the script all the way through filming it, and John Logan was brought in to kind of finish the rewrites, and it was a big epic, and they couldn't figure out what is this movie really about. Like, the hardest thing with a story is to distill it down to its simplest form. And finally, John Logan was the one that unlocked it, and he said, "This movie is about death. It's about going home. He wants to get together. He wants to get back together with his wife and son, and it's about the whole thing is about a worthy death." And that's the spiritual faith theme that kind of comes through.
And it takes the fear, like the sting is taken out of death too.
It's going
he
home.
Actually welcomes it at the end, you
Yeah,
know,
it's beautiful.
And probably that's what resonated most with me. But yeah, I mean, obviously there's a million great movies out there, but
that's a great one.
Love that. And for similar reasons, I love Braveheart.
Yeah,
you know, which is actually kind of very similar story.
Very, very similar. I love it. That's next on my watch list with my son. But Roma, we adore you. You are the best of us. I would work with you or for you at any point, because I respect you and Mark with all of my heart. And so you taking the time to really just talk stories today has been a treat. I can't wait for the Baxters to come out. Can't wait to see what you've created. And I can't wait to create more things possibly with you guys. We love you to death. And thank you so much for being a part of the show.
We love you too, Andy. Lots of love. God bless. Take care.
All right, Roma. Bye. And I think the thing I like about Roma is the idea of the authenticity and the gratitude of not forgetting where you came from. And, to go from being a coat checker in New York City to having the career that she's had, and then get to the point where she's at now, where she's hungry to tell more stories, being able to come back to television with a series, The Baxters, coming out on Amazon Prime, and then to have the discipline to be at that point in her career to give it away, to look for that next generation. I'm a beneficiary of that. Not forgetting where she came from and being willing to give it away to the next generation is something I'm forever indebted and grateful to. And I think that's something as storytellers we need to remember, that there comes a moment where you earn your voice, you have your moment, and you establish your brand. And it's easy to get selfish there. And instead of that, of looking behind you, of what's the next round of people coming just a few steps behind you, and how do you help them up? How do you kind of share the wealth? And Mark and Roma have been generous to us to a fault of being able to be a part of our career in that way. Forever grateful. And so don't forget that as you go on your journey. That's our show today. Appreciate you guys being a part of this.
The Storytellers is a Kingdom Story Company production. It is produced by Nick Carey with production assistance from Ben and Justin Bailey. Our executive producers are Kevin Downs and Brandon Gregory. Social media for the show is run by the team at Troops and Allies, and our music is Twisted Rooster by Tommy Profit. Special thanks to Jaron Weatherly, Evan Johnston, and our entire team at Kingdom Story Company. We have so many exciting guests coming up this season. To ensure you don't miss any of them, subscribe to The Storytellers for free on YouTube at Kingdom Story Company or wherever you listen to podcasts. For exclusive first looks at our upcoming films, behind-the-scenes content, and invitations to advanced screenings, join the conversation as a Kingdom Insider at kingdomstorycompany.com and follow us at Kingdom Story Company across all platforms. As always, thanks for joining Andrew Erwin and his friends on The Storytellers.